Conor McGregor was once the most electrifying name in combat sports. A man who went from collecting welfare checks in Dublin to becoming the first UFC double champion. For a moment, it seemed like nothing could stop him. His sharp tongue, knockout power, and magnetic swagger turned him into a global icon. But the very traits that fueled his rise, the trash talk, the arrogance, the reckless lifestyle, are the same ones that dragged him into scandal after scandal. What started as brilliance turned into chaos, and what was once a story of triumph has become one of the most dramatic downfalls in sports history. Conor's story began like a fairy tale. Born in Dublin with little money and no safety net, he worked as a plumber before dedicating everything to fighting. His early career was built on hunger training, non-stop, eating only what he could afford and chasing a dream no one thought possible. That hunger paid off. By 2013, he had arrived in the UFC, and it didn't take long for people to realize this wasn't just another fighter. His left hand carried knockout power, but it was his confidence that shocked fans even more. He spoke as if his victories were already written in stone, and then he went out and delivered them. The moment that changed everything came in 2015 against Jose Aldo. Aldo had reigned as featherweight champion for nearly a decade, but McGregor ended it in just 13 seconds with a single punch. It was the fastest knockout in a UFC title fight, and it launched McGregor into superstardom overnight. Not long after, he made history again by becoming the first fighter to hold two belts in two different weight classes at the same time. From Dublin poverty to two-division champion, it was the ultimate underdog story. But the higher he rose, the bigger his ego grew. And soon, the hunger that made him unstoppable would be replaced with something else entirely. Trash talk had always existed in fighting, but McGregor took it to another level. He didn't just sell fights, he humiliated opponents. His press conferences were must-watch television. He called Jose Aldo a little Brazilian chicken. He mocked Eddie Alvarez, Nate Diaz, and anyone who stood across from him. Fans tuned in just to see what he'd say next. Even those who hated him couldn't look away. McGregor knew that words could be as powerful as punches. He got inside opponents' heads, made them angry, made them reckless, and then capitalized on it inside the cage. But trash talk is a dangerous weapon. It only works if you keep winning. And when McGregor's losses started piling up, the words that once made him a star began to sound hollow. If McGregor's career had a breaking point, it was UFC 229 against Khabib Nurmagomedov. The buildup was ugly. McGregor crossed lines no one thought he would, mocking Khabib's family, insulting his religion, and even throwing a dolly through a bus window in a staged attack that injured multiple fighters. For months, McGregor promised the world that he would destroy Khabib. But when the cage door closed, it was Khabib who dominated him, forcing a submission in the fourth round. What followed was chaos. Khabib leapt over the cage to attack McGregor's team. A full-scale brawl erupted in the arena. The UFC had never seen anything like it. For McGregor, it wasn't just a loss, it was humiliation. The man who built his career on backing up his words had been broken in front of the entire world, and his aura of invincibility never returned. From there, the downfall accelerated. Outside the cage, McGregor's behavior grew darker. There was the infamous pub incident where he sucker-punched an elderly man who refused a shot of his whiskey. The man barely reacted while McGregor was dragged out like a reckless brawler. There was the fan whose phone he smashed outside a Miami hotel, the nightclub fights, the assault allegations in Italy. Again and again, McGregor acted like the rules didn't apply to him. For years, the punishments were light, a fine here, community service there, but every incident chipped away at the image of a global superstar. And soon, the scandals would escalate far beyond drunken fights. For nearly a decade, rumors and accusations followed McGregor. Allegations of misconduct surfaced in Dublin, in France, even at an NBA game in Miami. Some cases were dropped, others quietly settled, but the shadow over his reputation grew heavier. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Fans who once cheered him began to wonder if all the stories were true. Sponsors hesitated. His own country turned against him. And then came the trial that would change everything. In 2024, McGregor faced a civil lawsuit from Nikita Hand, a woman from his hometown who claimed he had assaulted her in a Dublin hotel years earlier. The details were disturbing. Doctors testified to her injuries, an audio recording captured her emotional recounting of the night. McGregor denied everything, insisting it was consensual. But after weeks of testimony, the jury ruled against him. He was ordered to pay over €248,000 in damages. It wasn't a criminal conviction, but the verdict was enough to destroy whatever was left of his reputation. For many, it was the final confirmation that McGregor's empire was built on a rotten foundation. And with the ruling, the walls around him began to collapse. For years, McGregor had used his fame to build businesses. His whiskey brand, Proper 12, was his crown jewel. But after the trial, even that began to slip away. He was dropped as the face of the brand. Retailers pulled it from their shelves. Other sponsors and partners cut ties, desperate to distance themselves from his name. The millions he once flaunted were now draining away. And for someone who built his image on wealth and success, the financial collapse cut deep. But money wasn't the only thing he was losing. McGregor's public appearances grew more chaotic. His face looked different, his body ballooned with sudden muscle gain, and his erratic behavior fueled endless speculation. He was caught slurring through interviews, twitching on camera, posting bizarre videos online, and deleting them hours later. He showed up drunk or high to events, embarrassing himself with incoherent rants, like the night he tried to call out KSI after Anthony Joshua's victory. Conor's story began like a fairy tale. Born in Dublin with little money and no safety net, he worked as a plumber before dedicating everything to fighting. His early career was built on hunger training, non-stop, eating only what he could afford and chasing a dream no one thought possible. Through it all, Dee Devlin, McGregor's longtime partner and mother of his children, stayed by his side. She was with him before the fame, paying bills when he couldn't, believing in him when no one else did. But during the civil trial, she had to sit in court as the details of his night with another woman were read aloud. For most partners, that would be the end. But shockingly, Dee defended him publicly, turning her anger not at McGregor, but at Nikita Hand. It stunned fans. To outsiders, it looked like blind loyalty. To Dee, it was commitment to the man she had built a life with. But if his partner stayed loyal, not everyone around him did. Perhaps the most telling betrayal came from Artem Lobov, McGregor's former training partner and close friend. Artem claimed the idea for Proper 12 whiskey was his and that McGregor owed him millions. Now, he's suing for $8.3 million. The irony was hard to miss. The man McGregor once called family had turned against him, joining the growing list of people who wanted to take him down. And when even your closest allies want revenge, it feels like the story has come full circle. Conor McGregor's life is the definition of a rise and fall. He went from a broke plumber to a double champion, from an underdog to the biggest name in combat sports. He inspired millions with his words and his fists. But fame, money, and arrogance consumed him. The same mouth that built his empire fueled rivalries that spiraled out of control. The same fists that made him a champion were thrown in pubs, nightclubs, and courtrooms. McGregor once said, "If you can see it here, and you have the courage to speak it, it will happen." He saw himself as a king, and for a moment, he was. But he never saw how quickly a kingdom can collapse.